Okay, it is April Fool's Day. Don't be fooled. It's a real thing. We have a real show. We're not going to fake you with AI avatars or anything. We have a great guest today. We're going to discuss all kinds of cool things related to telecommunications and satellites and cellular technology and energy. And so, anyway, but before we get going, let's have our own John Sibley Butler play some music in a new Dolby sound.
A past that's sprinkled with so much blues. I got a few old dreams that I can't use. Who'll buy my memories of things that used to be? And there were the smiles before the tears. And with the smiles, some better years. Who'll buy my memories of things that used to be?
Woo! Man, that guitar is sounding so good. So good. So it is Passover. It is Holy Week. Everybody's gone. We do have an audience. Lots going on. Wars, meltdowns, price of oil. The Iranians are bombing everything or went to bomb everything. Stock market is up and down, up and down. The economy, inflation, politics, crazy times, energy. Elon Musk earlier this week announced the TerraFab and is going to be a building that is going to be the largest fab in the planet. It's going to be in Austin. I'll show you in a second what it's going to look like. The URL is terrafab.ai, and it's a partnership between Tesla XI, which is his AI company, and SpaceX. And believe it or not, the first thing that he put on the front page after announcing this is that you can watch the video of the announcement or share your resume. He's hiring. So if you want to go to build the fab of the future, he's going to compete with Intel, AMD, and NVIDIA. He claims he's going to build everything they make and then some. This is, in my opinion, this is, of all the things that he's doing, the most difficult and ambitious thing that he wants to do. And he's putting, to start it, $30 billion. Obviously, the richest man in the world, money is the object, but I am so excited about what's going on. The amount of innovation that is taking place is incredible. And I would love to hear your guys' thoughts about the moment that we're in as it relates to the fact that we could be negative about all the bad things that are going or positive about all the things that are going and really try to rationalize how do you are in a place where AI, data centers in space, going to Mars and the moon, flying cars on Earth are all within our grasp. Johnny?
Well, first of all, let's start off with something negative. Oracle was the headlines of the paper in Austin. Because of AI, they're laying off thousands. I think that's pretty interesting. But you know, the movement of technology to scholars, that is, you know, for those of us who we didn't go to trade school when we went to college, we went to be a scholar, right? And so I went back to read books like this, you know, this book, you know, Technology of the Gods.
Yeah.
My favorite one is all of the works of Tesla, the real Tesla, right? And then
Yep.
another one is The Ancient City.
Mm-hmm.
So I have an hypothesis. We might be repeating what's been in the past.
That's right.
Okay? So the world does not start in 1300. The world starts 2000 BC, 3000 BC. So we have learned to look at how the movement of technology has been constant. I've said here before, my greatest course in graduate school was the impact of technology on society, where you trace the impact of the ancient world. Did India have the technologies for flight? What is written? The books are there. Were the pyramids? Were there a power plant? They never found a body in there. They were not a grave. Mm-hmm. So if you look at all of these technologies, it's fascinating that what has happened is that science has taken precedent now over business.
Mm-hmm.
When I say that, what I mean is my entire life, I have been concerned with the impact of science and technology on the creation of enterprise. It was I who went to China, University of Beijing, to introduce the Chinese MBA students in their Harvard over there to what a deck is, rather than just reading a case study and saying, do you grow or do you close the company down? So for the first time since maybe the science fair in Chicago in, was that 1918 maybe, we now have science at the very, very top. And the reason is because Elon Musk is also a scientist.
Mm-hmm.
He is not just a business person who picked up the science and created a company. He is a person who is a scientist, who tries to understand science, and then he puts those ideas out and say, I'm going to create a new company based on this science. He did not go to the laboratory to create SpaceX. He did not go to the laboratory somewhere at a university to say, well, we're going to put data centers in space. No, it comes from his head. And Henry Ford was a business person. He picked up the mechanism of the engine and commercialized it, right? Bill Gates was a business person. It's a computer science company. So I think what we're looking at is that Tesla is alive, the real Tesla, my favorite scientist, who believed that there was enough energy to actually, to do the world, to allow the world to have endless energy to do anything we wanted to. When he died in New York City, the FBI went right to his files and confiscated his files. He created alternating currents for us when he lit the fair in Chicago. So I think, let's not think about this as something that's tearing us apart, as you say. The good thing about Western society, and it's not true of other societies, and not true of the East, not true of the Middle East. It was once true of the Middle East. But since 1300, science in the Western society, up through Germany, through England, to America, has been the most prominent thing that carried us forward. So what I'm saying is that let's welcome Elon Musk's new ideas. And at the same time, we must realize that Oracle will be laying off thousands of people because of the balancing the impact of how they invest in AI, data centers, and et cetera. And they just don't need you anymore. So you're being released. And that was the headline of our paper.
Right. Llewellyn, what say you?
Well, I think we're in a very precarious situation. Things do not look very promising. There are a lot of dark clouds on the horizon, and you can pretend or hope that evolution and technology will overwhelm them, but they nonetheless are there, and they're going to have a consequence. The first one is AI is now beginning what I think will be a tsunami of job consumption. There'll be a huge reduction in the number of jobs. The first to be felt will be women, where something like 6 million women in 5 or 6 years will lose their jobs. It's women because there's a certain category of work that has always been traditionally done by women: receptionists, secretaries, librarians, etc. All of that work is going very quickly to AI. It doesn't mean men won't be affected, but the cutting edge of the job retraction will be for women with dramatic results. Worldwide, it'll continue. There won't be any safe haven from it. until a whole new line of occupations evolve. And that could be, I don't know when. I think it will. I think eventually people will find new things to do, maybe new products with new activities, but they're not at hand. The second is the out of control federal deficit, which is now so large that nobody expects we'll grow out of it. The latest suggestion I've heard, which I've just heard in the last couple of days from a very famous financier, and that is that we're going to have to convert the debt into bonds and basically wait for inflation to help us with the debt. It's called monetizing the debt. You still have the debt, but it's in a different form. It's more long term, and it gives you, in a way, a clean slate aside from the old debt to deal with. We have not had a balanced budget since Bill Clinton. It cannot go on forever. We're going to be spending almost our entire tax take and paying the interest, and that's unsustainable. The other option is default, total economic collapse. The third unknown, which we're going to find out a lot about this summer, is weather and the changing climate and what impact that's going to have. We have severe water shortages throughout the West. They're likely to exacerbate. There's no quick fix, and there's no scientific fix. People talk about, we can desalinate seawater, but we can't. One, it's very energy intensive, and two, you end up with tons and then millions of tons and then billions of tons of salt that you have to do something with. So water is a huge problem. It's not just a problem in the US. Climate change exacerbates it. The irregular snowfall in the West is, we went through a ski season where snow often had to be made. Other places had too much snow. These irregularities are going to impact our society in many ways, including farming, recreation, etc. We have a dramatic energy shortage, maybe a greater energy shortage than was triggered in the winter of 73 going into 73, 74, followed by the Iranian oil crisis with the Iranian Revolution in the 80s. The world will not spring back simply because there's peace in Iran. A lot of infrastructure has been destroyed, infrastructure in Iran, infrastructure around about the Strait of Hormuz, and infrastructure in Qatar, Saudi, etc. You don't just go back to the status quo ante because hostilities have stopped. It takes a long period of recovery after hostilities have stopped. Europe is going to be very, very severely impacted through the summer, but especially the winter, where they may not have enough natural gas to generate electricity and for heating. A huge impediment in Asia, so dependent on hydrocarbons that come through the Strait of Hormuz. And of course, an incentive for every country to do what it can to indigenize its energy production, which will be more drilling, more fracking, but where that's not viable, a lot more renewables. Oddly, this situation will give a tremendous boost to renewables. No country will again want to be dependent on imported energy. It is such a liability. It points up the fragility of so many countries. So there's a lot of there's a lot of bad weather on the horizon, a lot to be brown and gloomy about. On the other hand, we are seeing technological leaps forward, which is terribly encouraging. I think it's going to continue. I'm so glad to see the United States going back into space after seriously into space to the moon after such a long tentative period, such a hiatus. It is something I must race on because very soon China and India will try to land on the moon separately, of course. I fear in the present reorganization of the world occasioned by the Iranian war that the great gainer will be Russia and the secondary gainer will be China. I don't think that we'll have done ourselves much good in terms of our position on the world escalator.
All right. Well, with that said, let me just a quick update on several things on my side. I've been invited to keynote the Energy Thought Summit that will take place in San Antonio on April 27th to the 30th. I will be delivering my brand new software-defined power grid keynote. And then I was also invited to be a keynote at the Green Cities Festival in Budapest, Hungary. That will be July 31st through August 1st. So those are two of the latest invitations out there. There's many other things in the works. But I'm just so excited that the conversation we're going to have because our guest today, Scott Foster, is an old friend. He helps run a company called Evolve Cellular. He does all the business there, business side of the house. And Scott champions the transformative potential of their products, and he can talk about their IMS WorkX, Volti, VO&R platform and their VoiceWorks X service for private 4G and 5G networks, and also talk about energy and talk about satellite networks and the challenge of moving signals around and what to do with all that stuff. So, Scott, let me welcome you to the program. It's happy to have you.
Sure. Thanks for having me.
So, Scott, tell us a little bit about Evolve Solar. I mean, Evolve Cellular, not Evolve Solar. And I'll share in my screen so these guys can see your website while you're talking a little bit, and then we'll come back and have a fabulous chat.
So, Evolve Cellular has been around about 15 years. We got our start. We actually won an auction for Band 17 spectrum in Texas, which was 13 counties, which represented everything between Austin, College Station, Houston, and Corpus, but not any of those cities. So we set out to build a network, and we had a coverage requirement that we went and built, and we learned a lot. We learned a lot the hard way about how hard it is to, design networks, build networks, and grow them. What we wanted to do is we wanted to actually anchor it in the cellular side, but provide home internet service, but actually make it so that it could do both home internet as well as mobile service. And that turned out to be a challenge. We eventually exited that business. And what we're currently doing is we're actually doing a fresh build through several grants for the Omaha tribe of Nebraska and a new entity in Montana called Inland MT. We've got, I think I don't know the exact number, but it's a couple of $100 million in grant money to do fiber builds, middle mile builds. We've got data center stuff we're doing there. We're putting up towers, and we've got a new strategic RAN partner called Skylark Wireless. And Skylark is going to be our RAN vendor for all of that network build. And it is basically, it's a way for us as a small carrier. And when you talk about small carriers in this space, if anybody that's familiar with the telecom business, they really don't have any concept of any carriers outside of the big three. We are a carrier, just like those guys, the big carriers, Verizon, T-Mobile, and AT&T. We just don't have the cash. We have spectrum. We have spectrum in small places around the country, and we're looking to build a new business model with what we're doing for the Omaha Tribe of Nebraska and Inland MT. So We got a lot to do this summer. We got a lot to do over the next 4 years to build a lot of that network. My role is really to drive the team, help the teams get device testing done. So we have a good suite of products, Pixel, Apple, and those things. We worked through all of the 911 emergency service testing. And just a little personal side note, of course, I'm in Austin, and July 4th of last year, you see these red, white, and blue bracelet. I was getting ready for a parade here in the town I live in when I got the news and that there was a flood in Ingram. And I've worn these ever since, and I'm waiting till July 4th to do some research on what have we done to fix that. I'd love to talk more about that here if you guys have ideas, but we're not really in the business, but I do feel like it's a communications issue that we ought to be paying more attention. Andres and I have had lots of talks about intelligent infrastructure and infrastructure regulation and lots of things in Texas, and I think there's some overlap in discussion there.
Sure,
But
sure. So real quick to help our audience, Scott,
mhm,
you guys are sort of in the trenches making all these things happen. We talk about smart cities and this and that, and the grid of the future and the
mhm.
technology. Your company is one of those companies that is building this stuff and not in the hottest markets, but in the outskirts of all the big markets.
In the
First
hard to
question,
reach areas, in the
right,
places that it's difficult,
right.
where you would otherwise do satellite, and hence why there's a lot of research from on our part
Well,
about
so
what's the alternative.
quick question. If you know the answer or not, give me an estimate. How many
Mhm.
companies like your size solving this broadband problem in America? How many companies?
Like us, not
A handful.
handful that are attacking it from the perspective of more wireless, less fiber.
Hmm.
Because in our mind, from a taxpayer's perspective, it costs a lot to go to a house for fiber.
Right, right.
Once you get north, of 10 to 15 to $20,000 to go from one house to the next, it just makes more sense to go wireless. There's probably a point at which it does make sense to just do nothing but low Earth orbit satellite, Starlink. But that's where we fit, is in that space between it would be better to do wireless than fiber and less than satellite.
Yeah. So anyway, I'm going to turn you loose because I think this conversation you have knowledge about in comments to make about satellites in space, communication
Hmm.
from space. So guys, go at it. Johnny, you're muted. You're muted.
It's obvious, Scott, how you're doing that you're in the communications business, whether it's cellular or whatever, wireless or whatever have you. That's just incidental, right? That is,
Right.
your business is really communication. As what I had a lecture that said that when we started Pony Express, all the Pony Express people were excited about building new buildings, getting faster horses, and somebody invented the telegraph.
Hmm.
They're out of business. I think we were talking earlier that one of the fascinating things is that it is one of the oldest industries in the world, the communication business, whether it was on cameras in the Middle East or cellular now. So my question now, I happen to think that I was in China, I taught in China, and I saw the technologies where they wouldn't need cell towers anymore. You could be sitting in the middle of an ocean, you could be sitting in a desert, and you could make a call.
Hmm.
And I always ask, why do we still have cellular? Why do we still have cellular tower? Is because of the switching costs. I think SpaceX Starlink joined that tradition. If I'm not, I think so. So tell me about the technology that's impinging, if you will, on your cellular technology, which I think is obsolete.
I'm going to actually touch base on some of just the commentary about the current issues, right? This is energy. It takes energy to take bits and turn them into waves and send them through the air. If you're going to do that in space, it's expensive. The signal that leaves my cell phone that lands on a tower that is 8 kilometers away. If you were to take that signal and you send it to a Earth orbit satellite, it is 25 million times weaker when it arrives on the antenna at the satellite. If it's low Earth orbit, if it's mid, it's even less. It takes energy to overcome
25
that
million times weaker.
weaker. That's right. Which means
25 million.
25 million times weaker. It is just takes energy to overcome that physical distance.
Mm-hmm.
And you can make a phone call. You will be able to do things. It just takes energy. And so I see what energy, it's going to be an energy issue in space. Now, this is not an official statement on behalf of Evolve Cellular. This is Scott's fascination with where does the world go? I just turned 58 and I'm like, where do I need to be in 10 years? Am I still working, right? So should I bolt and make a change for satellite? I just don't see it. How do you generate enough energy in space to do the work and to transmit the bits? Every single bit of information since the first smoke signal, which is nothing more than energy, turned into a message that was transmitted through the air that someone else could see. It has taken more and more and more and more energy to transmit information, store it and process it and so forth. So, the war in, Iran, I mean, a lot of this sort of revolves around energy. My thought is I had my father-in-law travel the world and he said, I don't know of very many wars that were not about some form of energy, either the land, the wood, the coal, the oil, the whale oil, the natural gas, the slave energy, the land to grow the food, to feed the slaves that you've just taken over. Lots and lots of energy wars. So I think
like that
space is an energy issue.
I love that answer. It leads me to another technology question. So that's a problem. That's a wicked problem that we must solve. That is a wicked problem in the sense that it is unstructured. The problem has not been structured. It's more than unstructured. It is wicked. So my question is, what would you do in your head to decrease or make that signal stronger going to the satellites rather than creating more cell towers? That is, if you had, how would you conceptualize the movement of energy to make it stronger? Would it be relay? Would it be relay towers in space?
Well, I'll pivot to where Skylark comes in for us. And Skylark is a new company. They were a technology incubator come out of Rice. They develop some intellectual property around what, if you're familiar with radios, effectively beamforming, right? And if you had AI beamforming and you really could focus the energy really tight on the intended recipient, okay, and focus your antenna back from that, you really could gain a lot of efficiency. We're testing it. That's the reason we've chosen Skylark, is to help develop that technology. You could do that. And you may be able to do it with the antenna in the radio. I'm not an engineer. I do have a degree in business, but everything I learned about RF engineering, I learned it the hard way. Many times I'm referred to as the MacGyver for my company.
Great answers, because it was a question of Tesla.
Yes.
That was his question. And he was doing the wireless. He was trying to do wireless electricity. I don't know if everybody was going to die, but he was certainly doing it. Right. Well, I think that this area of technology, of movement of science, has always been, whether we're moving cars, whether we're moving signals, whether we're moving smoke, right, or whether we're throwing a football, right?
Correct.
It has always been at the very, very center of exactly what we do. So therefore, here you sit at the very, very center of the future. So thank you. That was good answers. I got some more. My distinguished colleague. I want to dominate like I can. I have to give my distinguished colleagues some time.
Where do you see the telecommunications business in 5-10 years? Will there be small companies like yours filling in the gaps, or will we have a more universal coverage?
Well, so I'm going to tell you about something else that I'm working on to answer that question. So about 15 or maybe even more than that years ago, do you guys remember when the FCC moved us all to digital TV in the US and they reclaimed some spectrum? Well, part of that goal, that project was to get that spectrum back. And that spectrum, because it was the public spectrum, was repurposed and is now what they call citizens band radio service. It is a
Mhm.
public RF space that anyone can use. The industry calls it private wireless. I think the better term for businesses would be enterprise cellular, but private wireless is what the industry calls it. You guys know that if you have an industry that is dominated by three giant gorillas, that does not inspire a lot of innovation. This private wireless space is generating innovation, but the larger carriers, of which I'm not one of, have a lot of roadblocks. We call it in the industry a walled garden, in which you've got to do all these things to be on the inside so you can do things. Devices, actually just plain old cell phones, right? For that you can buy at the Google store at Best Buy, are really, if you will, locked to the three carriers. So
Hmm.
it is hard to go buy a phone to develop a new application for those private wireless. One of the things I'm doing is trying to help get the OEM manufacturers, Samsung, Apple, Pixel, to open their device up or at least set a standard so that that device could go on to this private network, this innovation network, the CBRS space. So I think I'm hoping, and we've done a lot of work with the GSMA, which is one of the standards bodies for device unlocked definition, to make devices available for more small carriers like us and operators in the private wireless space, so they can get devices. They've pretty much got IoT taken care of. I think, Andres, you guys, there's energy company after energy company announcing, a deal with Interix
Mhm.
about IoT, but there are no devices that work that have voice on them that make 911 calls. And 911 is
Correct.
the big issue there. Can a person who picks up a mobile phone that has a reasonable expectation that if you dial 911, can it reach public safety? That has to be working everywhere.
Well, maybe the answer for that is an agent that knows how to manipulate IoT networks, and you tell your agent to make the 911 call.
You could. That's right.
Yeah,
And
go ahead and keep going.
Do you see a time when spectrum will become a commons rather than being privately guarded off and sold off? But it was initially a commons that was then privatized and sold for profit by the government, or sold for money by the government. The government is not supposed to make a profit.
right. Well,
So
they're not
some
selling it. They're technically leasing it for a long, long time.
So something that you, so something you've got that was public, was a commons, has
Hmm.
become privatized. It's like beachfront property. The beach was there, people swam on it, people bought a house near it and said the beach belongs to me too. Get your kids off my beach. Um, how analogous is that, and how important is it? The internet itself has become a commons. It is open to everyone. We can all get to it, which is rather refreshing. I'm wondering how many more commons we'll see. Particularly, I'm wondering whether AI can become a commons, or whether the gatekeepers that have set themselves up now, we know them all,
Hmm.
and maybe they're essential to develop it, but they also have, sort of pegged out exclusivity. They put their pylons down to the water's edge.
Right.
Uh, and is that right? We see also, and adjacent to this, being the creation of unbelievable wealth, basically from government inventions. Uh, these are big social issues, and Johnny's very interested in the intercourse, the intersection between social and scientific issues, and they're going to play into the kind of society we have in the future. Uh, is it going to be a pattern going forward, the pattern that we've seen in the electromagnetic world, where wealth has been created for individuals from government inventions. And that wealth has gone to secure more wealth by preventing the establishment of commons, by privatizing all of these new frontiers.
It'll be a challenge on spectrum just because of, the today, I mean, in the US, I mean, it's controlled by, a couple of big providers, and I think it'll be very difficult to unwind that. It's, it's the public's asset, much like the land is the public's asset in Texas, not everywhere else in the country. So, access to put in conduit along a highway, anybody that has the money that wants to can do that. That's not necessarily everywhere else in the country. It's a little harder sometimes. Will there be a commons in spectrum? If it were, I'm not sure it's going to be any fun going through what will happen to see the other side. I mean, with all of the devices, all of the radios, all of the infrastructure that's built around the current regime, that would all have to go away, I think, overnight before you would have something else on the other side. I just don't. I'm not sure I see it.
Scott, let's think about this.
Are we going to see forever this dependence on spectrum, or is at some point something going to come along and turn spectrum into the equivalent of copper wire, no longer essential?
Well, Scott, let's think about this. We had AT&T,
and
it was the big dog, and we tore it apart. We tried to tear it apart, but like a chameleon, it went back together.
Right.
So should we congratulate large companies that dominate and become, for the public good? Is it sharper to say maybe AT&T, we can learn a lot from AT&T because it takes the long view. It doesn't. It
might have been necessary in the beginning. Go ahead. I'm sorry.
So my question is, where we are now, we've talked a lot about this. We like to have things standard because when things are standardized, it's better. I like to say that the grid is where computers were 60 years ago. I like to say that you were doing ABC, I was doing CDF, and everybody was doing everything. And my good buddy from Austin, Texas came along and created Microsoft Windows and standardized everything.
Right.
You said, well, why can't we get these different telephone companies to open up their phones and make them an open base like Apple never did, by the way, but Microsoft did. So my question is, what is it okay to have a monopoly in the communication space, or is it that bad? Because it looks like, per your conversation, when we tear them apart, they come bouncing back. Like Kansas basketball would like to bounce back, but has no choice. It is not bouncing anywhere. So are we going to do this? Are we going to have a monopoly again? Are we going to have another AT&T going forward? Spectrum, what are we going to do? And by the way, is it okay?
There probably is a useful purpose for a monopoly, to gain scale, to set standards. I think AT&T, look, I went to work for AT&T when I was 18, and it had been broken up the year before. And there were a lot of teary eyes when I walked into work and we talked about the good old days. But if you think about it, it did a lot, right? It was especially a Western Electric that did a lot of research. They generated a lot of cash. They invented a lot of things. Did it run its course? Well, public and the government had decided to. But I'm going to give you this example. I use this a lot when people are talking about school choice. So just follow me here for a second. Look, how much did you pay for a long distance call in 1984?
A lot.
What kind of computing devices did you have in 1984?
When I was in college, we called after 5 o'clock because it was cheaper.
Yeah, I know.
And it was a collect call.
Yeah, that's right. And today, do you even know what you pay for a long distance call?
Yeah.
Because it's not even worth the ink on the page to print it, to send it to you. And the computing device that you use to make the call is, I don't know how many times more powerful than that device. So breaking up AT&T, I would say introducing competition into that otherwise monopoly generated a lot of value. that we're all taking advantage of today. I'm actually encouraged by Andreas's comment about this terafab because, and I think the whole thing to do radios in space, there are probably a lot of people, a lot of technologies being developed, and they don't have an audience to even go find somebody to develop it. But I bet you there are people at SpaceX that'll entertain any crazy idea to generate energy in space right now, which is probably not a bad thing.
Mm-hmm.
And spectrum may become, if you could focus it, who knows? There's somebody generating it, may be Skylark. I don't know, right? If there's some new technology that can reduce interference, create efficiency in the signal itself, it could become a commons if you could not interfere with other operators. Who knows?
Well, Scott,
That
let me ask this, and that'll be fine. As a consumer, I just want to make a call. I just want the electricity to come on.
That's right.
Why should I be concerned at all with the technology? So,
No.
although you're not in the public sector, your complaints come when the cell phones go down. We can't make a phone call. So, do you see yourself as just satisfying the customers? As long as the customers can speak to one another, who cares?
No, I think
How do you see it?
I personally don't see it just them being able to, it comes on, right? I think my comment about the July 4th and the floods and the notice and the warning, I think there's a communications responsibility. Our industry, I think, is responsible for addressing that. It's come down to, I think it's more than just making a phone call.
Yeah.
I think it's public safety. We depend on it. And
Well,
I think 911 is the forgotten part of what we now depend on the communication system.
I agree.
The only
I was born in New Orleans, so I'm accustomed to water waking you up at night. Right? Louisiana, they're trying to wash us away. And of course, here in Austin, the flood of the reason why it's called 6th Street is because 1st Street and 2nd Street and 3rd and 4th Street flooded. So therefore,
Really?
6th Street became the major because the flood couldn't get there. But
Really?
I think it's a combination of signaling, and I think that when it comes to what happened like in the Hill Country, is what we haven't paid attention to. I mean, when I say this, if you look at some parts of Europe, they've been living underwater forever, no problem.
hmm
But New
Right.
Orleans, we underwater, we still having problems.
Right.
Because
You
what they
get
have done in Scotland is to take is the Netherlands is to take care of the water. But when I go home, if it rains a minute, I'm splashing in water.
Right.
So I think it's a combination of signaling and putting the engineering with the signaling. I do.
I think that monopolies provide very reliable service if they're regulated so that you have an appellate procedure if you're not getting a fair shake, but they cease to be innovative. They have no incentive to innovate. It is inequality that drives innovation, desire to get some of the good stuff for yourself that drives innovation.
Dial-up internet. Dial-up internet became publicly available in 1992.
Hold on.
And
Sorry, my bad.
Um, so you need some mixture of them, and you need always to let you have some terrible examples of where innovation was stifled by corporate interest. Henry Ford not wanting to build a 6-cylinder car, not wanting to have a car painted any color but black, or Sarnoff squashing FM radio because he was making so much money on the old-fashioned AM that he really just bottled up FM, which he had in fact paid for to be developed. That's what you get with the monopolies. You also had the enormous insistence in the newspaper business that all type had to be justified, and only the linotype could do it. And the linotype was controlled by the big newspapers who discouraged the linotype manufacturers from reducing their prices or selling them to anyone who might offer, and the big printing companies, any opposition. It was regarded that you had to have a certain threshold of money in order to enter that business. Computers just wiped that out. wasn't necessary. You didn't need justified type, and setting type became a very easy and simple thing. A linotype machine was a technological amazement. It has 1,000 parts. It is a beautiful thing, but it also was a symbol of monopoly. People didn't realize that it was, but it was the choke point on the free press, not the presses, the setting of the type that held back many smaller papers not being able to start or flourish. So I think you need, while it's not bad to have a large monopoly if it is regulated, and regulation has sometimes its own creativity. People trying to work around a regulation can be very creative. And some of the great steps forward, I like to quote outboard engines. The outboard engine was always two-stroke, always polluting, always reliable, and always intensive on fuel. When the EPA said that the new standard for outboard engines, the 2006 standard, this is all history now, the manufacturer said that's the end of recreational boating as we've known it. Thousands of people will lose their jobs. This is ridiculous. But the engineer said, we'll have a go. First, they improved outboard engines to a point that they weren't polluting with electronic ignition control, etc. And the companies had said that if you put a four-stroke engine on a transom, you'll sink the boat. It'll be so heavy, so clumsy, and will cost so much. Well, they put them on. They cost about $100 more than a two-stroke, and they weighed about 100 pounds more, no penalty. And the regulation there led to a huge leap forward in the technology. Now you have quiet, efficient outboards, and nobody makes two-strokes anymore. And that's what can come when you're circumventing or meeting regulation. So regulation can be an incentive to creativity. It's a mix. I think you need the mix.
Balance.
You need a solid presence.
Let me ask
but you also have to not have regulatory capture by the monopoly or the oligopoly, right? Who is in control of the regulatory agency that sets its own rules. That's
absolutely, Scott, and we see a lot of that.
Yes, I always say
you're absolutely right. You need to keep the mix fluid and bubbling.
I always say that Llewellyn has wisdom. Let me ask him something. So, Llewellyn, you were around when you lost your newspaper to digital, when newspaper folded up and you can do them anywhere.
Yeah.
You were around. You were around when certain kinds of instruments in the airline industry switched to digital. What were the people saying in the newspaper industry when their AI came?
Well, they were mostly aghast.
Yes.
They weren't actually saying anything because the enormity was such that they couldn't really comprehend it.
Yes.
And as usual, when people are in that sort of situation, they want more of what's not working. The immediate reaction is, oh, well, if we only had so many more stories on the front page, or if we had only had a bigger horoscope section, or nobody recognizes no when no is absolute. They think
let me ask you this as a
there can
wisdom.
be some adjustment. And now we're beginning to realize the future of the newspaper is what the New York Times and the Wall Street Journal have done very, which is to promote the digital product.
Now, I want to put your wisdom hat on. I'm going to ask you a question just from the gut of your.
This must be a trick.
I want you to think back when you were eating that.
I have a closing question before y'all use all our time. Okay.
Okay. All right. My question is this: will AI be rejected 10 years from now, and we'll go back to humans? What's your gut?
No. Okay. Once the genie is out of a bottle, you don't get it back in the bottle.
Okay.
AI is here to stay. We're going to have to live with it.
Okay.
That's what I think.
Right.
I think that there will be places where you will pay a premium for a human, even knowing it will be flawed. You'll pay extra for it.
Just like a horse costs more than a car now.
That's true.
A horse
So,
costs more than a
Scott, you
car.
had a question or a
so,
comment? Go
so
ahead.
Llewellyn, I'm gonna pivot on your. We want more of what's not working, and I'm gonna go back to comments from the beginning of the talk and raise this idea that do we want more NATO or less? If Russia can't take over little Ukraine, unarmed Ukraine, does NATO even need to exist if they can't even take over Ukraine? Why bother anymore? Do we want more of you NATO or more of what's not
Well,
working?
let
That
me
is
put
an
it.
excellent question. I think one of the things that will come out of all this is that we'll see stronger national defense, partly because of Trump urging them to do it, partly because they cannot rely on the American umbrella, and partially, and most importantly, the truth that you have mentioned, which is that Russia has not succeeded in taking over Ukraine. Now, remember, it's a somewhat asymmetrical war because Russia has nuclear weapons and, in theory, could take over Ukraine by dropping a nuclear weapon and end it all very quickly. So there is an asymmetry there.
Mm-hmm.
If you increase the amount of the land involved in the war, the temptation to use a nuclear weapon goes up geometrically. So you've got to be very careful about that conclusion. But it does point to a certain, and clearly our militaries, all of them, are muscle bound. The drones are showing, do we need battle groups? Do we need
Correct.
most very, very, very expensive weaponry when very cheap weaponry is doing the job? It's
Right.
almost the longbow versus the crossbow all over again.
Yes,
Yeah.
Hence why the FCC has put out a comment request on industry and drones. I think the war is driving that request for comments from the industry in the U.S. on drones.
I think drones are a very large, a true changer of everything, including domestic security, because you
Mhm.
can go down to the hobby shop and you can buy a drone and drop it on your mother-in-law.
Yep. Yep. Yep.
and Llewellyn's asymmetry there is it was Henry Ford who said, I asked my customers what do they want, and they want a faster horse. And so the asymmetry or the unexplained variance, as we would say in statistic, is that Henry Ford was talking about customers, and here you ask a question about security. And the question is not, do we need more? Do we need more of the same kinds of technologies? As Llewellyn said, we're going to have the nationalization of security
Mhm.
rather than security being based on globalization.
Mhm.
Good question, though. I like the question.
Yeah.
Scott, let me ask you, how do you see the future of space and communication? And do you think we're going to see a lot of industry basically put into space? We've talked for a very long time about putting solar power in space and using microwaves to bring the power down to Earth, and it hasn't gone anywhere. Do you think we'll see it with communications? Do you think we'll see it with data centers?
Well, I don't know. You guys probably have read this, and you may know this guy, the guy who wrote Next 100 Years. I'm drawing a blank on his name, and he predicts that the next war, frontier is in space, and power will be generated in space to power the war machine. We will figure out power in space at some point. My concerns about telecommunications in space will be fixed with energy, I think.
George Freeman.
George Friedman, that's right.
Gotcha. He also wrote The World is Flat. But I'll say this, Scott. I think the military already has it figured out.
That they may already. That's correct.
Wasn't George Freeman.
And I'll just say this as one who interviewed
It was,
with bases and everything. That's all I say.
it was Friedman at the New York Times who wrote The World is Flat.
That's right. Two different Friedmans.
Yeah. Two different Freeman. So real quick. So here's for the audience in general, right? The speed on fiber is 10 gigabits per second, 10,000 megabits per second.
No.
the speed from Elon Musk Starlink, he just announced the latest breakthrough is 400 megabits per second versus 10,000. So the point of the more the data, the more the AI, I mean, he's going to have to put 1 billion satellites in space to move the same amount of data that would be moved by fiber.
Yeah.
And the question becomes at some point, what happens on space when there are 100,000 satellites, 1 million satellites, 10 million satellites? Are they going to collide with each other?
Some will.
They will.
Remember, we also have the option of the oceans too. We've talked about that. And there are data centers under water now. So.
Well, yeah, there are other options beyond space, but the challenge, and this is a lot of what Scott is talking about, is that thank God that I chose to come to the energy space in 2000 because everything is energy, and maybe the answer to all this is software-defined radios, software-defined spectrum, software-defined power grids. So come to my keynote at ETS in San Antonio on April 30th to learn my proposed software-defined power grid, which is a paper that is also being submitted to the World Economic Forum and many other places, where I'm defining a new way of how software will manage power and rationalize and manage the hardware, and all be programmable on your mobile phone.
Are we going to still have zeros and ones? Is that not going to be obsolete?
Never going to be obsolete.
Okay.
I would just remember in all of this using computing as the basis of evolution, that there are ideas and flair, things that do not come out of data. They come out of the human spirit somehow.
The data come from us. You're right. You're exactly
and change everything.
You're right.
The one thing you can say about predicting the future with total certainty is that you'll be wrong.
That's right. That's right. That's right.
I may be
That's why everybody
speak for yourself, Llewellyn.
That's why everybody should read the Advanced Smart Grid, Edge Power Driving Sustainability that I wrote in 2011 and updated in 2015. And it goes from Tesla and Edison all the way to 2030. And when you read that book, actually, there is nothing wrong in it, Llewellyn. Amazing. Amazing. Scott, where are you going to be doing the next 6 months? What's happening? What's in front of you?
We're doing a lot of work in Montana and Nebraska. That's going to be what's on our schedule. Building a lot of network in hard to reach places. So it's a challenge building fiber, and that's probably going to take us. I mean, the bulk of it's going to be now, but it's going to play out over the next 4 years.
Can I ask you quickly? Are you working with rural electric cooperatives, because they've tried very hard to boost broadband in rural areas?
So I'd say the only thing worse than working with a rural electric cooperative is working with a rural electric telephone company.
Okay.
They got run off out of the cellular business decades ago and just have a bad taste in their mouth. I wish that it was a thing. And honestly, Llewellyn, it's a lot of what we're trying to do is we're actually building something that we can prove to them that this is a model. And we're developing a business model that we can say, come see this, look at it, feel it and touch it. We can help you do this in your market.
Very interesting. Thank you.
Llewellyn, final thoughts.
It's an uncertain and dangerous world, but we're in it.
Johnny?
As Nate Silver said in The Signal and the Noise, there's a lot of predictions, but a whole lot of noise.
That's
and
right.
Very few predictions come true.
That's right.
Except, of course, for my work and your work.
Take us away, Johnny.
And remember, it's always now, as Willie would say.
God, it was very
always
nice.
Now.
Enjoyed it.
Nothing ever goes away. Everything is here to stay. And it's always now. it's always now. There never was a used to be. Everything is here with me, and it's always now. So brace your heart, find yourself some sanity. It's really only you and me, and it's always now. And here's your part, sing it with the melody. It's really only you and me, and it's always now.
Love it. Love it.
Very nice. Very nice.
Thank you, Llewellyn. I'm just trying to be like you when I grow up.
Happy Holy Week.
Happy Holy Week.
Happy Passover. Wish you all the best. Happy holidays.
As we say in New Orleans, Mardi Gras is not over until it's over. Okay. Thank you.
Yes.
Thanks.